Okay, we're live.
We're live, buddy.
Welcome, Mark.
Welcome.
Hey, thank
Good,
you guys for having
Thank you
me.
for coming.
You're welcome.
good to have you today. We have Mark Cook, who's a project consultant, right, with Dalinghaus Construction,
Yes.
and it's a pleasure to have you. We've seen what you do on Instagram. You've done work. We've done work together.
Yeah.
You specialize in foundation repairs.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you could tell us a little bit about, what is a foundation repair? How do you specialize in that? How long have you been doing that?
Well, I'll go back a little further. My father was a civil engineer, so I
Okay.
worked with him doing computer drafting and on AutoCAD and then land surveying. So that's where I kind of learned construction and land and soil, sloping, you know, stuff like that. And then in '09, I believe I got a job for a competitive company. And I started learning the business. And I started working with them drawing AutoCAD of foundation repair,
Okay.
a house, a floor plan with the where the piers are that lift the home. So that started me on the road to foundation repair. And then I got more involved, started working more full time, and then doing consulting and then working with engineers. And then, so foundation repair is if you're, let's just say you're a homeowner and you're walking around your house and you notice you drop a ball and it rolls towards the corner. And then you're like,
As
oh
simple
man,
as that.
why did that ball roll towards the corner? Or, hey, why is that cracked by my door? Or
Mm,
why can't I open or close this door? That begins the search of Google, the Google machine. You say, why is my floor sloping? Why can't I open my door? Companies like Dalinghaus Construction pop up. They that homeowner calls our company, sends someone like me out to do a site visit,
got it.
do an initial, you know,
Consultation.
consultation, do measurements, draw the floor plan, measure the elevations, whether it's a raised foundation or a slab on grade house, that determines what kind of fix we're going to do and where it's sloping, and then that kind of starts the process. Then you get the quote out, you get the engineers involved, you do the permitting process. There's a lot of little nuances
Sure.
that you do. But that's more the residential side of the foundation repair and why someone would call us and what it it kind of is and what I've
Okay.
been doing for a long time.
Beautiful. Okay. And then, I saw that you guys work with hydraulic lifts and so forth, and there's a couple of different ways. There was a thing called a push pier and then a helical
Hmm.
pier.
A helical pier.
Yeah.
Yep.
How do you determine, after you do all your studies and you go out there and you get underneath the house and you get an idea of what's going on, how do you determine how much you have to lift the house to get it back into the normal setting where it was before it's settled?
Yeah, great question. You utilize on your initial consult, you take the measurements. That's just not only just measuring the perimeter of the house, you're also measuring elevations with this thing called a zip level.
Okay.
It's called a manometer survey.
Okay.
So you take this manometer and you set a zero, and it's all based on a gas inside this zip level.
Okay.
You set a zero, it measures within a tenth of an inch. You take a mini measurements and you see how far it's down. An engineer doesn't want a normal house to drop more than a half inch in 10 feet. So we're kind of looking for those, the outliers, like, oh, wait, it's dropping an inch and a half in 10 feet, or it's dropping 16 inches over the length of the house, which we repaired one a couple years ago in San Clemente. So we're looking for that drop.
I'm sorry, how many inches?
16.
That
That's
was a 16-inch drop.
The house was literally cracked in half. So we're looking for
Okay.
those drops. So then a normal house that we do repairs on is down about 3 inches, 2.5, 3 inches. If there was about 3/4 of an inch to an inch in a house, or around like the 2,000 square feet, whatever it is, the floor plan, you wouldn't notice it. But if it's an inch in 5 feet, you're going to notice it. So we're looking to either stabilize the house from further movement or to lift it. So what we do is we consult with the homeowner, come up with a plan. Hey, your house is down 5 inches. We have to put piers where we're going to lift. So I start a lot of times, I was taught to start around 3/4 of an inch.
okay.
And then that's kind of how you determine it. And then it's based on the soils, whether you're using a push pier or a helical pier or the weight of the house, because the push pier relies on the weight of the house pressing down, and the helical pier does not.
Mm.
And then they're more independent, and they go every 6 feet to lift and every 8 feet to stabilize. So that's kind of why, or where you're determining where you're placing these things, and how many of you need. So
So you said that the push pier uses the weight of the house,
mm-hmm,
and the helical pier does not.
right.
How's that work? I mean, how for somebody like me that doesn't know, I know the push pier has like a jack or something that hits the metal down until it hits like a solid.
It's just pushing, really, hydraulically.
Okay.
So it's just slowly, these segments, they're about 3 foot segments
Okay.
on the push pier. They're going 3.5 to 4 feet, but they're getting pushed down. Then the segments are going on top of each other. So you could technically push a push pier as far as you want to go.
Until you hit what,
Right.
bedrock,
Mm-hmm.
or in San Clemente, what would you have? Is it still
40
bedrock?
feet.
Oh,
40 feet.
40 feet.
Yeah. So there's a lot, but that that's a different story, because in somewhere like San Clemente, South Orange County, the soils are highly expansive.
Okay.
So push piers are just segmented into each other, and they're not bolted to each other.
Mm.
You could bolt them, but normally they're not. But helical piers have bolts. So you torque them into the ground, and then you bolt on the next, section. But once you get a soils test in somewhere like San Clemente or Laguna Niguel or Mission Viejo, somewhere with the highly expansive soils, it's getting a phone call. I'm sorry.
No, no way.
Once you get certain we'll go back real quick. Once you do a soils test and you find out how highly expansive the soils are, um, you have to use a helical pier, because they're worried about things pushing off of each other.
So the level or the type of soil will determine which pier you use,
Right,
whether push
right.
or helical,
And the weight of the structure.
and the weight of the
So
structure.
if you have a raised foundation single story house
Mm-hmm.
or a garage, maybe, you may not want to use a push pier, because before it hits the load bearing soil, it might start pushing up on the house. You're getting a false lift.
Mm.
So that's happened. I do a lot of helical piers. I just like that they're all independent, and
Okay.
then they just lock onto the footing, and then you can lift. The push piers, they're a lot easier for our crews to do it, because one person can install a push pier.
Right.
3 people install a helical pier.
Okay, so when you use the word expansive,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean in terms of soil?
Have you ever walked and looked at cracks in soil, fissures?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's expansive soil.
Okay.
So the water comes in, expands it, it gets dried out, it gets contracted, and then you cause those cracks. That's always breathing underneath the house.
So is it more of a sandy, like the
Clay.
more
Clay.
clay,
Clay. Yeah.
more clay?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So
Because
it's
clay
like,
retains water, right?
yes, retains water. So it's the stuff that you can pick up in your hand and squeeze it and it stays there.
Got it.
So states like Texas, there's hundreds of companies like us. So plus, I mean,
They need it.
they need it. They literally water their soils to keep it at a certain rate.
Wow.
So it's crazy. I mean, we have a lot of expansive soils and a lot of places that need us, you know. A lot of it's poor compaction when it was built, you know, lack of I mean, we know tons more now than we knew in 1960, you know, when
Sure.
a lot of these houses were built.
Right. Well, you bring
Earth
that up.
earthquakes
Apparently,
Mhm.
the
also, right?
compaction rate in the 60s and 70s was like the 80th degree or
Mhm.
percentage, where now I hear is like 98% you have to compact it.
Oh yeah.
So the compaction rate from older houses to now is way different. So it would, as time goes on and rain and
Mhm.
everything, create some issues with the foundation.
Yeah.
I mean, I told a few people that we were going to have you today, and one of them said that at one point he owned a property where he was in the restroom and he felt that the floor was sloping a little bit. He went underneath the house and there were like 12 posts and pads that had separated.
Right.
So he could technically put his hand between the house and the post because it
Mhm.
was like half an inch or like 12 of them were completely separate.
Wow.
It's incredible what you
Yeah, and the house I looked at with you guys recently, I think some of the posts were sitting on rocks.
On actual like river rock.
Yeah, river rocks. So we deal at our company, we deal with raised foundations and then we deal with slab on grades. Um, fully different fixes. If the perimeter's settling, we still use our piers. But on the interior, on the crawl space, like we did with the first house we did for you guys, or the apartments,
Mhm.
we had to put those crawl space jacks.
Yes.
So back in the, you know, I don't know, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, whatever, up until 10 years ago, probably, maybe a little bit less, there was doing concrete blocks with wood posts, you know, treated wood. Um, Now there's so many different ways you could do it. You
Oh,
could dig out and put rock. You know, I think we did that there. You could pour a concrete pad or pad
you had
footer.
the smart jacks.
Yeah, we did the smart jacks or crawl space jacks. Those are fully adjustable.
Those
Well,
are
what's the difference between a dumb jack and a smart jack for somebody that doesn't?
Something you can adjust.
Okay.
It's just like that's why they give a big warranty on them. They're full galvanized steel and they attach to the beam,
Right.
and then you can push them up or bring them down, whatever you need to do. There's a lot of different variables of these. I mean, I saw a guy the other day that even he got them on Home Depot. They're a more inferior product than what we were using, but for his situation, they were going to do fine.
yeah. Now
Uh,
that does that actually lift that would it be the girder or the that beam or does it is it just to reach that point as support?
you use bottle jacks or some type of jack system to actually lift,
Okay.
and then you put these at that spot where you're going to keep it.
Got it.
Then you lock them in and bolt them into
Okay.
the girder beams. Um, a lot of people built raised foundation homes because they were cheaper. So there's a lot, I would say in California, 40 or Southern California, about 40%. I think that was the number, 35 to 40% are raised foundations. and then about 60 or 55 are slab on grade. We don't really have many basements, but there are outliers. You know, you go to Pasadena and places like that, you're gonna run into something, maybe some in Riverside County. But I would say 6 out of 10 would be slabs.
Okay.
But you have to, there's full neighborhoods. Like I live in North County, San Diego, or North San Diego County, and in South San Diego, North Park by downtown, it's all raised foundations. So even a lot of businesses, coffee shops, whatever, they're on raised foundations. So, but these homes were built like in the early 1900s. So,
Right.
to do my job, you have to be prepared to whatever you're going to run into, whether it's an apartment complex or a warehouse or residential homes. I'm mainly residential, but there are jobs where I'm, going, to do some big commercial jobs.
Okay. So on a residential, that's kind of like your specialty.
Yeah.
You mentioned the rolling ball could be a
Mhm.
sign of a sloping or foundation issues.
Right.
Well, I was thinking, what are three practical signs that somebody listening can say, hey, you know what, maybe I have a foundation issue here. Maybe I need to call Mark.
So I tell people, when you have a problem. Like when you need me.
Okay.
Like that, it is what it is. I put the golf ball on the ground. I'm practicing my putting, and then it just goes veers off down towards the corner. Uh-oh. Why is it doing that?
Okay.
I look for hinge points and certain things that are causes to why it's doing that. So that door frame over there would be completely crooked.
The whole frame.
The
Yeah.
frame would be crooked. Yeah.
Got it.
A house we recently did in San Diego like a couple weeks ago for an investor is kind of in by the airport. And all really old house. I could almost walk in it. This is an interesting situation. Walk underneath it,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
They actually had a homeless guy that was
No
living
way.
underneath the house. It was like 4 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
I'm 6'1", so I'm like scrunched down or whatever. But the guy had a full like TV, flat screen TV, and a little couch and a little
He
fridge,
was plugged in and everything.
everything. So the reason I bring that up is up top above him was a door frame that was down about an inch and a half within the 2.5 to 3 feet of width. So you look for that, look for the sloping floors, you look for cracks in the drywall, separation. If you're looking at, if you have a brick wall, you look at the stair step cracks, you know,
A lot.
it's,
There's a lot.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when you need us,
Right.
pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's usually a major noticeable thing.
yeah,
Not just like a crack, because I always heard, oh, look at window seals.
yeah,
Window sills, look at door frames. Are there
right.
cracks near it?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily.
Not all the time.
No.
They can be superficial. Okay? In
Mm-hmm.
other words, the stucco
It could
on
have
the
been
outside
done.
or whatever could be cracked, but it's not necessarily something that's affecting the structure of the property.
Right.
But to put everybody at ease that's listening to us, everything has a solution. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
I've seen you do stuff that I think it's like magical. Okay. And I know you love your job.
Yeah, I do.
And the other thing is that you have a great attitude about everything. You're extremely positive and you're really, really fair.
Thanks.
But everything can be resolved. Of course, there's money involved, but the
Mm-hmm.
idea is that every problem has a solution.
Yeah.
Maybe some are a little bit more, you know, it needs a little bit more work than normal, but everything has a solution.
Absolutely.
Okay. So,
Well, I mean, even talking about it, because we're investors and we're always looking.
Yeah.
In the past, you would see a foundation issue.
I would run from it.
He would actually, I'm backing out.
Mm-hmm.
Many times, right?
Yeah. I back,
Yeah.
no,
But-
not many times, all the time.
Because foundation
Until I met
issues-
you.
Yeah.
So you've changed the game for us too.
Yeah.
Because now
Good.
foundation issue, we
Yeah, honestly. Yeah.
it's got a solution,
Yeah.
potentially when you bring the experts out, and that's the cool thing. You guys
Yeah.
specialize. Your YouTube channel, your Instagram is a great place to see the work you guys do,
Yeah.
and we'll link on the description
Oh,
everything. And
thanks.
Justin's doing an amazing job.
He is.
Um, I saw one where you guys were on a lake, and you were installing
Yes.
pier. Can you just explain a little bit, 'cause for me, what that was you were doing? Was that a new build?
We're getting into seawalls. So I'm not into that
Okay.
that aspect of it, but
Okay.
no, they were driving in these big piles to make a seawall. It's like more of a barrier. That was on Canyon Lake. So a coworker of mine, friend Tom Bartholomew, he was on that. He's our seawall guy. So
It's crazy.
yeah,
So
we're constantly evolving because we have to, because
Sure.
there's always new products. I
Never
mean,
a
I'm
dull moment,
using
right?
no, I mean, I'm using
And that's the beauty
completely
of your
different
job.
products than I even existed when we started. Carbon fiber wrap, carbon fiber staples,
Yeah.
there's different epoxies. We're always doing some sort of training.
That's beautiful. You know, it's like learning something every day
Yeah,
because of what you are, what you're shown, what the issue is. And
right.
you got to be nimble, be on your feet to be able to.
Yep.
And then you have all these, because when I saw that you guys are talking about right now in that lake,
it's installing
well,
these piers.
you know what that led me to? There was an article, you start doing research and you go here and there,
Yeah,
and
of course.
it's a
The
rabbit hole,
rabbit hole.
like, but it led me to those oil rigs out in the ocean,
Yeah,
how they put those pylons into
right.
the ocean and how that cement has to
Oh,
cure.
Mm-hmm.
They actually build a barrier against the water so the area is dry.
Right.
They pump the water out and then they bring the, so everything has a solution, folks.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's the message here.
Yeah.
yeah.
So don't despair. You just need a specialist.
Yep.
And they come out, and of course there's money involved, but everything can be resolved. Okay?
Yeah.
Now another thing I saw was polyurethane. Is it a fill or what's it called? A polyurethane.
Yeah, it's a two-part component. Most of the time we can lift slabs with it and we can fill voids with it. So
Because polyurethane is plastic, right? Or it's a. Because
there's a
I always
lot
think
of
polyurethane is on, like, I thought it was on plastic bottles, like water bottles and stuff.
we in the industry we call it foam.
Oh, okay, foam. Is
So
that what it?
like you could go to Home Depot and get some foam to fill for
Yeah.
insulation.
I just
Okay.
did that.
You know?
I just did that on one of my properties.
This is more closed cell structural foam. So there's a lot of, I think the guy started in Germany. Um, and this is a really impressive product. I mean, you can actually lift a slab
When
with
it
this stuff.
hardens, it's just solid, right?
Within 10, 15 minutes, you can drive on it.
That's
Whoa.
crazy.
So I don't love it for lifting a house per se, because I
Okay.
get that question all the time. I'm at places, can we just use foam because it's going to be cheaper? You know, because normally it's going to be like 1/3 or half the cost of putting piers in and lifting a home. But I like relying on bedrock with piers, and then you can, lift hydraulically lift a
Jack
home.
him up.
The polyurethane, it has its purposes. You can fill voids with it after you lift a house. Say we lifted that house 16 inches in San Clemente. We're putting the polyurethane to fill that gap, you know?
Yeah.
And you have to do that.
I
They
see.
used to use like grout or like some sort of concrete to fill those voids, but the reason why houses are settling is because there's a lot of weight and whatever soil below it can't handle that weight.
Right.
So when you're adding more weight with
Mm,
concrete, like that used to be their old solution. Let's just put this concrete pad, thousands of pounds underneath the part where it's settling. Well, eventually
That's gonna
that's
settle
going to
too.
settle too. So someone came up with this foam solution. It was probably used for other purposes, and then they started, purposing it towards void fill, slab lifting. It's impressive.
Yeah.
If you do it right, you can actually create bulbs and almost make a pier.
Wow.
Oh,
You
wow.
can go down like say 50 feet, 40 feet, stack them on top of each other. It becomes almost a pier. That's a lot of money, but it's if you can't get a pier in somewhere, they do it a lot on airport runways, stuff like that, where they can't really, take a day off of planes landing and taking off. A lot of different. There's always something, like I was saying, like we're constantly learning something.
Absolutely.
There's a waterproofing urethane. There's some a lot of cool stuff. I mean, I don't get into every aspect of it because there's just too many things.
Sure.
That, like I said, because I don't know all the answers, but I know how to get those answers.
You know,
I know the people.
you just reminded me of something because I like ancient history and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. The Romans created some kind of a concrete that we today cannot duplicate.
Hmm.
And it's strong, very strong concrete. And I don't remember the details now, but you guys can look it up and research it. But
Yeah.
and apparently they were able to dry underwater. So I don't know how the Romans did it, but no,
Wow.
people have tried to duplicate it and they
Mm-hmm.
can't. Because you have different concrete has moisture,
Right.
and even when you pour it, you need to let it
Yeah.
what do you call it?
Cure.
Cure.
Yeah.
And I know that like for new developments, they wait like a week, maybe 10 days, 12 or something like that,
Yeah.
and they do other things so that, right?
It's like a 20. I don't know how they came up with it. I haven't really looked into it. I think it's 28 days for concrete to cure. And I've heard and read it's never cured.
That's right. I read that. It's never cured.
Yeah, so it's always something. So we used to say concrete is hard and it cracks.
Right.
Why is my concrete cracking? Mainly because they don't have steel in it or it didn't cure properly.
Right.
But there's a lot of like little nuances. We live in Southern California. We get earthquakes. That's why I say to people when they're like, "Oh my God, I have this drywall crack," and I go, "Well, anything else?" No, and I'm like, "Well, I mean, like I said, when you need us.
Right.
Like the ball is going, "Vroom." Or so I tell them, why don't you have a good drywall guy come out and repair it?
Yeah.
If it comes back, then call me.
Right.
Not everything is foundation, you know.
Right.
So,
Well, in the apartments that you helped us with,
yeah.
um, we're in real estate. Everything is disclosed, disclosed, disclosed.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been disclosed, but that property is going nowhere after you fixed it.
Right.
Prior to it, okay, we have to say, okay, it has foundation issues.
Right.
But then now you come in, you took care of it for us.
Mm-hmm.
Now that property is not going anywhere because the level of work and performance that you did to
Right.
stabilize that property,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could say it's as strong as it ever was, maybe even stronger.
More often than not, where we repair is going to be the strongest part.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it took how many years for it to get that way?
Right.
True.
Over 100.
Yeah.
Now, the last project you took a look at for us, there was a tree near the property, very
Mm-hmm.
close. And you talked about the Romans. And by the way, I've been to Spain. There are still Roman bridges standing. It's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
These guys, the architecture and the
Aqueducts,
construction they did was
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
incredible.
And our structures here are 100 years old, falling
I
apart.
know.
Anyways, um,
Well, we
uh,
have earthquakes.
roots of a tree. How is that something that can affect the foundation? Can you get a little into that?
Yeah. So a lot of times trees are awesome. I love trees, but they should not be near homes. The root systems, especially on ficus, trees. I talked to structural engineers about it. They say the canopy where the leaves end, on the if you look at from an aerial view,
Sure.
the diameter of that is where the roots probably end on a lot of trees, not on all of them, because I think palm trees go straight down, but a lot of trees have that invasive roots. Roots look for water. So if you have a plumbing leak, it's more negative when you have a slab on grade home
Right.
because the root will go down underneath that slab and start pushing up on that concrete. It'll create havoc. So only way you can really solve that problem is by cutting the concrete slab out, cutting all the roots. And I mean, what if that's in your kitchen or your bathroom or that's now you're having to deal with plumbing.
Oh,
It's a lot of money. And I tell people keep those roots away if you see them coming towards your home. Cut that root off and then put a root barrier in. I mean, you see them all the time on by sidewalks and public areas and parks. There's just a hard plastic that a landscaper can install, but so much of this stuff that I look at every day is preventable.
Mm.
right.
I mean, 90% of the homes I go to, the water is or the dirt or concrete is sloped either flat or sloped towards the house. It needs to be opposite. Drain 2% away from the home. You want water away. You want there's a lot of yards I look at where side yards and there's just
The sprinklers are right next to the wall of the
right
property. Something as simple as
planters,
that.
sprinklers.
You got sprinklers that are, just turn the heads around
Right.
because some of them, you don't look at them for a year and they're actually spraying the wall of the property,
Yes.
and that will create problems.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's notorious. We had an issue right here, okay, where the old piping, they were made out of clay,
Yeah.
and we were having very low water pressure and we couldn't figure it out why. We got into the bag, we started digging, and the pipe was like, I guess 4 inches. Is that what it is?
They vary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, the point is either 4 or 5 inches, but the roots of a tree had gotten into it where instead of being this wide, it was a little thin, because the roots were occupying the entire stretch
Mm-hmm.
of that pipe for 16 feet. So
Wow.
we had to replace
Yeah.
16 feet of piping. And then the beauty of your business is you got to watch out with the slope. You
Yeah.
better have the slope like it's,
Yeah.
especially on the piping.
It reminds me of like when somebody has clogged arteries
Oh God.
and cholesterol buildup. That's
Right.
what it reminds me of. Less
Oh
blood
yeah.
can pass through oxygen and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
less water can pass through.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Um, what else would you say is something interesting about what you do that because you've been doing this how long? You said since
2009.
09. So you've
So
seen a lot.
going on 15 years.
15 years. What's one of the like an example you can give us? I know you gave us a cracked house example and that
Mhm.
you guys had a lift. What's something really interesting you've come across that
Is that not to throw things at you, but we were
yeah.
talking about that mudslide in the hills or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Is that interesting to you, or is that new, or?
That is very interesting. We have to get engineers involved with stuff like that to give us a plan of action. Then we
Is that
bid on that.
soil engineers or
Yeah, I work with multiple engineers,
okay,
structural engineers, geotechnical engineers. I'm constantly asking questions because there's constantly things that are coming up.
sure.
Stuff I get asked certain questions probably once every 2 weeks that I've never heard before, So I'm like, huh, let me find that out and I'll get back to you. And then I call the people I need to talk to and, based on, what I need to tell them. We're getting into, well, we've done this for a long time where we want to stop the movement of a current wall. Like if it's a retaining wall and it's retaining dirt.
You did a retaining wall in Palm Springs, right?
Yes.
See, now that's interesting to me
Mm-hmm.
because I thought once a retaining wall was breached, there was no way of fixing it. But yeah, you're fixing it, right?
Right. It depends on how much it's breached. So like if there's some movement and some cracks, then we can stop it. We can put, instead of the helical piers going vertically, we can put them going laterally.
Right.
And then you put this big beam, it's called a whaler beam, some sort of steel to, connect all these helical piers. Because the main thing you got to think about with our business, we want steel connections.
Okay.
So if it's concrete moving, we want to put steel in and then connect it to where, now these helical tiebacks that can stop things from going laterally, including homes, sometimes they're going 30, 40 feet underneath or behind the structure.
Wow.
So not all walls can be saved, but we're working on one in Dana Point. We're going to start in a couple months, but it's this big stack in place wall, and there's $20 million homes above it. So it's worth it for this HOA
Oh,
instead for this 55 linear feet times 35 feet tall to spend, $1 million to save this thing
Sure.
because it's supporting underneath 2.5 $20 million homes.
wow.
So we're going to start that. That's probably going to take us about a month or so once we get started, because we have to run an excavator and a boom lift, because we're going to have to core through this thing and then put these big piers in. And I think the engineer scope for 50 feet back behind this hill, then it's all going to be connected with rebar, and then concrete is going to be
That's huge.
shotcrete.
So the
So
piers stay in the
mhm,
soil.
yeah,
Yeah.
But in these
forever.
other instances where you're talking about helical and push piers, do
Mhm.
they stay in as
They
well?
do.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, wow.
They
Yeah.
do.
So you're actually
So
leaving these posts in there.
Yes.
your foundation is normally about, say, 12 to 18 inches. Sometimes it's a little more, depending on the height or whatever, the weight. So these piers, they call them deep foundations. So that's what like a caisson is, or a helical pier, or a push pier. You're now being stabilized 20, 30 feet down.
Got it.
And so,
Got it.
but you were mentioning like the interesting project I like. I always refer to people to this one house in San Clemente. It's this house was a drug house. I mean, I went in there. I'm alone, right? When I go into some of these properties. I mean, I've had people sleeping. I've seen drug paraphernalia. I've heard things, when I'm in one part of the house, but this house was like literally drug paraphernalia, probably a party house every night, you know. And so I'm in there usually, in the mid-morning time or whatever, and this house was cracked in half. And it was like 2-3 inch wide cracks going through the entire slab, and the ceiling was cracked in half. I did measurements, I guessed 11 inches, before doing my measurements, and it ended up being 16.
Wow.
Well, it was 15, and by the time we got all the permits,
It was still
it was
sinking.
16.
Jesus.
So an inch within 6 more months.
Can you imagine?
So I love that job because of what it looked like when I went in there initially. And wow, I mean, what a vision that like the guy did to convert it to what it is now from what it was. But like that we were like an integral part
Sure.
on making that thing, livable, and now it's over a $2 million property,
Wow.
That
That
crazy.
is so cool to see the before and after.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's got to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't mention it, but one of your many talents is to squeeze through any little hole to get underneath that property, because it's cool. You really get under there
It's
and
amazing.
yeah,
You
you,
wiggle in
yeah.
there.
Mark
What
is
was it? Half man, half snake? We have it on our Instagram.
you get in there
That
quick
that
and
thing got over 3,000 views.
Wow.
Half snake, half.
That's cool.
but I'm sure that you have seen a bunch of stuff underneath
Mhm.
properties, and
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Well, you saw when you got in
Yeah, I
back
was
in the
doing
day when.
termite and pest control, and I found
Oh.
it was a dead cat that had larvae and everything there, and
Ugh.
oh, it was stinking up everything.
It's the worst.
And he was underneath. And the other part of it is that they didn't teach you how
I
to
was
put on the mask
I was
properly.
18 years old, and it was my first job out there, and so I
Hmm.
had my mask upside down.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I breathed in. I'm like, man, isn't this smelly for you? And my partner wasn't telling me anything. So yeah,
Oh man. It's
but I'm sure you've seen a lot too.
yeah. Unfortunately,
Oh yeah.
I haven't ran into any human bones that I can say.
How about treasures? Any money?
You know, it's surprising I've not gotten money. And I'm like, I'm gonna keep it if I do. I'm actually pretty honest, so I probably wouldn't be able to sleep. So
You're a
I'd probably
nice
give
guy.
it back to the homeowner and then, hoping they would share it with me. But
Yeah.
there was one,
Any gold?
Mhm.
Rings?
nothing. I found other contractors' equipment.
Oh, okay.
That's
You know,
valuable.
we do. One of our coworkers, he actually collects like the old bottles and cans. So if I find something cool, I'll do that. But
Yeah.
normally what is most intriguing to me is like the house that I looked at for you guys is that it was on a rock, or a brick.
Yeah.
Or it's so funny, like
Crazy.
it's weird like what they think is going to be structural, you know? I'm just going to put a couple pieces of wood, it haphazardly whatever, and then it's like, oh man, you need to consult with someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, I think this is a really good introduction to what you do and how you specialize in foundations, and hopefully people got value out of this.
Yeah,
We're gonna link on the description so that
great.
they can reach out to you directly. And I don't know if there's anything else, any other questions you have for Mark before we
Well,
wrap it up.
the thing is that we have used your company and your
Yeah.
services, and that's how we got to know you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to say is that they have great people working.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you come and you go sometimes on the sites.
Mm-hmm.
The people you leave behind is extremely important for your company,
Right.
and they were all very courteous.
Good.
You know, I asked a lot of silly questions and they didn't look at me up and down, or anything. They answered my questions very courteously and I learned a lot. We're also the type that get involved in
Yeah.
what we're doing, but the support and the people that you have are fantastic with your company. I couldn't say more about them, all
Mm-hmm.
of them. I mean,
Thank you.
so far, every single one of them. And I think that's extremely important because the people that you have working for you represent you.
Yeah.
And if you have, a snob here, there, or whatever, well,
Right.
you may do a good job, but we may not want to call you again.
Right.
And so the attitude amongst the team, and I think it goes because you guys love what you do, and every day is a new experience, and you keep learning and adding to your knowledge base.
Yeah.
Because when you come to like these homes that are sliding off the hill and you have
Right.
to put retaining walls, like the retaining wall you're doing in Palm Springs,
Mm-hmm.
that was a shocker to me.
Yeah.
The way you guys are, and that was a huge, that was
Mm-hmm.
long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so I couldn't say enough about the company.
Wow.
Love you guys, man.
Wow. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
for having me.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Our
It's been our
pleasure.
pleasure.
Go ahead and hit that button one more